What another incredible day of college football. Yesterday, we didn't think maybe would have quite as many upsets or surprising big storylines as the week before, but college football did not let us down again. And from the very jump of yesterday, it was just a surprising, shocking college football Saturday. So let's dive in. We got some big games, big stories to cover here. And I think the biggest one that we have to start with is Penn State and UCLA. UCLA came into this game 0-4. Penn State coming off the double overtime home loss against Oregon. And Penn State fell down 27-7 in the first half. UCLA was running the ball all over them. Nico ran for over 100 yards, threw for, I think, 200 or nearly 200, 165, ran for 120, ran for 3 touchdowns. UCLA was all over Penn State in the first half, and Penn State got the ball back with over 2 minutes left. They were driving down the field, and we saw some horrific clock management from James Franklin. They had 2 minutes left, and they decided to run the ball on 3 straight possessions, not use any timeouts, and then go for it on 4th down with 20 seconds left outside of field goal range and not get it. And I don't really understand what they were doing. They decided to run the ball. Apparently, he was trying to bleed the clock of some sort. It was horrific college football management, and that kind of set the theme for poor clock management in the day. And this one, Penn State came back at the end. There were some blown coverages by UCLA, but it didn't really matter as Penn State once again fell flat. With the ball near the end zone, they ran some sort of quarterback zone read where Drew Aller could keep it or not. I don't understand it personally. I don't know why they wanted to run Aller as much as they did in this game. They gave it to him. He was just stood up. UCLA was all over them, and maybe the 2,000 fans in the arena were going crazy. So a great college football upset. And people last week, different media members had different reactions to the Penn State game. Some said they still thought Penn State was a top 3 team, Joel Klatt, in the country. And others, like Josh Pate, said that this is a very pivotal moment for James Franklin, for this team, for not only the rest of their season, but the future of the program. How do they respond from a loss like this? Is it the start of the downfall? Is it the start of really turning things around? And I agree with that sentiment, especially seeing how things went this week. It was just an epic collapse. And Penn State's got a lot of questions. James Franklin, it wasn't a top 10 team. It wasn't like he consistently lost to the top 10 team. But all these things that people were talking about with Penn State, the run game that was okay at best, I think they ran for less than 200 yards in this game. And yeah, the run game was suspect. The defense was really bad, especially in the first half. And they looked terrible on the road. To me, what was surprising about the Oregon game was that Oregon played well, and I think Oregon's a good team. They didn't play near their best. And Penn State also didn't seem to play near their best, but they had the home game. They had the whiteout. It was shocking to me that in the whiteout's almost a touchdown to a 10-point favorite. At least that's what it seems, where you've just got a huge advantage being at home. The crowd, the atmosphere, all the above, the night dark whiteout game should have given you a huge boost, and you still lost. Here you're on the road. They don't have a Power 5 win this season yet, and I don't think this team should be ranked after the performance they just had. I thought they were way overrated last week. I thought they should have been in the late teens behind undefeated teams like Vanderbilt and Georgia Tech that were still undefeated, had beat some quality opponents at home, on the road, all the above. Penn State hasn't beat anyone this season, and they were taking on Ohio State on the road in a few weeks. This could be disastrous. It could turn disastrous. You've got, I think, Indiana and Ohio State throughout the rest of the season, and with the way they're playing, this could easily be an 8-5 season, and no one would be surprised, even in how top-heavy the Big Ten is. There's a few great teams in the Big Ten, but the middle conference to the bottom of the conference is not nearly as strong as the SEC, for example. So Penn State's got a lot of questions to answer. And James Franklin, I mean, is he on the hot seat? I don't really know. I think this game is certainly a big one, but you got to see how he does the rest of the season, because technically playoff hopes are not lost. But this is a huge blow. And just with all of the hype, with all of the expectations for this particular group, it was disappointing to see them play the way they did. And huge credit to UCLA for getting it done. This game, actually, I saw a crazy stat during the game. They had led for less time than the entire season than they led in this game. This is their first win, and the first time, I think, in 50 years or so that a team that is 0-4 has beat a top 10 team. So just a shocking, great performance. And another huge upset was Texas. I talked about last week, Texas and Penn State, I thought were way overrated. I think Texas beat Arkansas. That's their Power 5 win. And other than that, they don't have a whole lot of very quality products to really sell their resume. This game on the road in Florida, easily the toughest environment of Arch Manning's career. I was really interested to see how he would respond, how Florida would do, and this was an awesome upset as well. Penn State ended up being a touchdown win. This one also was a touchdown win. I think it was 29 to 22 was the final in this game, 29-21. So it was an 8-point game. Texas had a chance with an extra point or 2-point conversion there at the end. But I didn't really think highly of Texas, LSU, or Penn State. I thought all of those teams were kind of overrated. But the difference was for LSU, they beat Clemson at Clemson, which is a somewhat comparable win to beating Florida at Florida if Texas were to have done that. But we didn't see that. Arch Manning looked mundane. He looked like an average college quarterback, at best maybe. He willingly took 6 sacks in this game. This wasn't Florida got after him. He had nowhere to go. He was standing in the pocket with open receivers downfield with the ability to scramble, take off, or to throw the ball away, and he got sacked 6 times. This was really poor awareness from Arch Manning. From the start of this game, Texas looked out of sorts. Their defense looked out of sorts. And when he lost his helmet there in the fourth quarter, the backup came in and threw one complete pass out to the boundary that was a first down. I thought they should have just kept the backup in. maybe that's crazy, but it was a snappy pass. It was a beautiful throw, and it was better than any of the balls that Arch had thrown all day. Even his big-time touchdown pass to Mingo in the third quarter, it didn't come out of his hand very well. He does not throw a particularly pretty ball. So his work on the ground with his legs was good, but that's really been the most dynamic part of his game, has been just his running ability with his passing. I'm not really trying to be particularly overcritical of Texas per se, but I think it's frustrating to me to see how hyped up this team is, particularly how much the media hypes up Arch, how much they hype up his abilities. Even in this loss, the announcers at the end of the game were talking about, well, he played well, and it's good to see him step up in a big environment. He did not play well. He threw multiple interceptions. He was their leading rusher. The rest of the Texas team did not play well. And I think this one's tough. I mean, Texas next week they're taking on Oklahoma. I don't remember if that one is at home or away. I think it's at Texas, which would really save them. But this one is another one where they lose, and I think they maybe should be ranked in the 20s or not ranked at all. There are other one-loss teams that are more deserving of rankings, have better resumes. Their best win is Arkansas. Their resume is losing on the road to Texas by a touchdown and losing to Florida, 1-3 before this, Florida, who now gets their second win of the season. And to me, you need more than one Power 5 win to be ranked in the top 25. So just disappointing. Now let's go to the Florida side, the team that won, because that's really what we should talk about in this game. Because there are still some more big things here to talk about for Florida. If you missed this game, you might think that Florida played an incredible, well-rounded, balanced game. And they didn't. this was a sloppy game from Florida all the way through. Lagway played solid. He threw for nearly 300 yards, threw a bad interception there in the fourth quarter that gave Texas a chance to come back. But really the difference here to me was just playing at home, and Florida has a better defensive and special teams core than Texas does. You saw it against Miami. They really made things tough for Miami at the start of the game. Florida's offense was really holding them back. But in this game, they blitzed well, got 6 sacks. They got the safety off the punt return, or off the blocked punt. The special teams really stepped up. And I think in moments they also played well. Lagway threw a great ball to the freshman receiver Wilson, who's just a physical force. He might be the best freshman receiver in the country with Malachi Toney. And there was a play where he went up for the ball and he stiff-armed, coming out of the route. It was physical, handsy. He really bodied the corner. You maybe could have called a push-off, but I didn't really see the push-off. He just physically imposed his will on the corner for Texas, made the play, stiff-armed another guy, bounced off a tackler, spinning down the sidelines, reminiscent of, in a way, Ryan Williams' epic spin against Georgia last year. He's really, really talented. Florida's got 2 really great true freshmen, 5-star wide receivers. And Lagway played okay in this game. I think okay is really a fair assessment, maybe a 6 out of 10. Florida really was clicking on offense in the first half, and then they kind of sputtered out. The defense was what won them this game. They held them in the game early, and even having I think it was a 19 to 10 lead, and the 19 to 7 lead going into halftime. They only added another 10 points there in the second half. So another thing that was glaring, I was talking to a Florida fan during the game, and he was complaining about Napier's play calling, complaining about Napier in general. There was a couple moments where Napier really seemingly to me, attempted to sell the game. And at the end there in the fourth quarter, they ran the ball a few times to bleed the clock, and then they called timeout on third down. After second down, they called timeout, and it saved 40 seconds off the clock from Texas. I don't really know what they were going for. Didn't really make much sense to me, and yeah, it was really questionable. And there was another moment before halftime where they instead of calling a timeout, they lost, I think, 17 seconds. And it cost them from putting more points up on the board with another field goal before half. So while these moments didn't really matter, that's the difference between winning against University of South Florida at the start of the season and losing. And to me, this game in no way saves Napier's job. Talking to my Florida fan friend here, he was saying he wasn't sure if he wanted Texas to win this game or if he wanted Florida to win, just because if Florida lost, then Napier's job is gone sooner. And he's not like the way that Napier has led this team. He's not like the inconsistent play. And to me, I largely agree with that sentiment. I'm not sure, to me, that Napier did anything here to really save his job. There was nothing particular. I mean, to me, it was just the talent that Florida has on defense that really won them this game. And I think the game management concerns, the lack of discipline, there are a lot of penalties. They struggled there in the second half situationally. This game, while Florida wins and it kind of saves their season a little bit with just an awfully tough schedule, they still have a lot of questions to answer and a lot of problems. So, next up. Oh, also Texas. Where should they fall? I think I covered that as well. I think they should fall a good bit outside of the top 10. So, next on to the game day game. Who thought the game day game would be the third one I'd be talking about? But I think the other two are bigger storylines in my mind. So, Alabama ended up winning against Vanderbilt. They won, I think, 30-14. In a game that looks lopsided in the box score. It was not lopsided. This game was close the whole way through. And this one really proves to me that Kalen DeBoer is a really, really good coach. The stat that I talked about last week against Georgia was Kalen DeBoer being 12-1 leading at halftime. They led at halftime again. They had an awesome 2-minute drive there to put up points, the touchdown to Jeremy Bernard to put up points and take the lead. And when they're leading, even though I think it was 17. Oh, sorry, they tied. Actually, they tied at half. So they weren't trailing at half. So I think that was huge. They were able to drive down with a minute and a half left. They tied. So excuse that stat. But Alabama with Kalen DeBoer is undefeated at home. Let that sink in for a second. They're undefeated at home. They've beat Georgia. They've beat every other SEC opponent at home. DeBoer's 3 losses last year came all on the road. They lost to Vanderbilt, Oklahoma on the road, and Tennessee on the road. All pretty difficult places, maybe besides Vanderbilt, to play. And Alabama in no way played perfect in this game. They still allowed big chunk rushing plays, which was a little disappointing considering they looked sloppy on the rush defense again. But overall, well, looking here at the stats, I think they allowed around 130 rushing yards, less than 200 yards passing. It was a much better defensive performance, even better than Georgia. This team is raising its floor. They're raising the level that they play at. And Vanderbilt's a good team. Vanderbilt showed in the first half when they were leading most of the way. They're a very good team. And I think Alabama just situationally on defense, they really stepped up to the plate. You got sacks when you needed them. There's a critical interception there in the fourth quarter. And Alabama, the defense, after Vanderbilt scored in the second quarter, Alabama's defense didn't allow another point. It was just great work on fourth downs, overall consistent defensive play. I was really impressed with the defensive side after everyone talked about how porous the rush defense was. I will admit I did pick Alabama to win the SEC, which, may be slightly biased, but I will say I think this team looks really, really good. They seem like one of the best 5 teams in college football. I know they lost to Florida State in a bad way at the start of the season, but again, they're playing a tough schedule, and I think they're really, really good playing with a lead, playing in situational football. They showed you situationally again, a minute and a half with that 2-minute drive. That just really impressed me, as well as being creative with the play calling. They put Ryan Williams in different actions. He went over 100 yards, I think for the first time this season, if I'm correct. At least the first time against a really quality opponent. And they got Caden Proctor again on a big third down. They handed him off the ball. It's beautiful to see the big man running forward. They said on the broadcast that it's his reward for losing weight in the offseason, just getting incorporated into some running and pass plays. And I like the creativity. I think Alabama's really good, and it's been great to watch them. Now, what worries me is their next stretch in the schedule. They've got Missouri on the road. I think they've got LSU at home, Tennessee at home. They're going to have Oklahoma at home later in the season, on the road at Auburn. They'll have South Carolina at home, and I think there's one more road SEC game. But these road games are going to be tough. I trust Alabama more at home, but the other thing is you've got a little bit of leeway to lose one of the games. So if you drop one to LSU, if you drop one to Oklahoma, you'll still have a good chance to make the playoff, especially as these ranked wins start piling up. It's a tough schedule. Now onto the Vandy side. To me, you can't be too disappointed about this loss. Pavia is really a playmaker, and he's going to give your team a chance to win. I think this might be one of the best losses in college football, although I don't particularly count losses as being a criteria to move you up in the rankings or anything like that. I think this one, losing at Alabama in a supercharged environment on game day, it's tough. Vanderbilt has only beat Alabama once at Alabama, which I think it was in the 1920s, if I'm not mistaken. And This game, the final score really doesn't show how close it was. It was a one-score game for a large part of it. In the third quarter, Alabama kicked 2 field goals to be up 20-14. They kicked another field goal in the fourth quarter with 4 minutes left that really put things away. And then Jam Miller rushed for a touchdown. But the defense for Vanderbilt looked good. They had some chunk plays. I think Vanderbilt is going to be up there at the top of the SEC. To me, obviously I think they're going to be better than Texas, but I think, to me, the best teams in the SEC have been Alabama, Georgia, Ole Miss, and Vanderbilt through the first stretch of this season. So we'll see how Vanderbilt does against some of their competition, such as Missouri and Georgia in the future. They don't have an easy schedule per se, but this is a team that could win if they have a few more wins and lose to Georgia at the end of the season. They're going to have a case for the playoff. Not to mention they, of course, finished their season rivalry against Tennessee, which who thought that rivalry game would be competitive? Let's move on here to Miami, Florida State. This game was important for the ACC to kind of establish the top dog. Florida State, they beat Alabama. They lost on the road at Virginia. But this game had larger implications than just a win or loss in that immediate context. So I know Georgia Tech is also undefeated. They were off this week. But to me, these two teams are... We'll see how the season develops, but them and Georgia Tech are really the top dogs, and these two teams have been better at the line of scrimmage so far this season. So I don't have as in-depth of a breakdown because I missed kind of the middle section of this game, writing for the Notre Dame Boise State game, which I'll get to last. But to me, watching the pieces I did, watching the highlights back, Miami is a really, really talented football team. I think they are one of the most complete teams in the country. They have studs at every position. Obviously, Carson Beck is a great quarterback. They've got first-round talent on the offensive line. I think the right tackle specifically is being touted potentially top 10. They've got Ruben Bain, of course, on the defensive line, another player that is also touted first round. And I think with the receiving core, Malachi Toney, with the running back group that they've got, this is a really, really good team. Well-balanced defense. Their secondary is just probably the most improved unit in college football. In my opinion, this Miami secondary from last year, I think being in the 80s to this year, they're I think borderline top 10 in terms of pass defense. They've now beaten all 3 teams in Florida. They really controlled this one. The final score shows it's closer than it really was as well. 28-22. Florida State battled back to score a pair of touchdowns in the fourth quarter, but it was rough. It looked rough at the start of this game. So I really liked Miami against Notre Dame in week 1. I thought that just the way that they were able to get after the passer, their pass defense, they stopped Notre Dame, and we know how good Notre Dame's offense has been this season. They can also step it up and win on a road environment. That was one of the last questions I had. And Florida State is probably the most difficult competition that they'll face through the rest of the year. So it's relatively smooth sailing. I think their toughest game is at Pitt later in the year. But they looked really good, winning, of course, 28-22, and a front runner. I think they should be the number 1 team in the country. Maybe Ohio State has a argument, of course, winning the national championship last year. But to me, Miami is right there with them. So I've been really impressed by Miami. Florida State, they were down big in the fourth quarter. I think it was 28-3 at one point. And they impressed me with just their competitive nature and their toughness in the fourth quarter. They came back to not really make it a game because it was never in doubt for Miami, but they had some great drives there. I think they scored 2 consecutive touchdowns with the 2-point conversions. One drive went 19 plays and converted 2 fourth downs from Castellanos. And I know that this team was really out of it, but they showed more of an ability to pass, an ability to move the ball against a really good defense. And I wasn't too disappointed with how they ended the game. Just because the defense played particularly well in the fourth quarter. They got the ball back to the offense. And I think that they're going to have a good chance here to still compete in the ACC. So I know they have 2 losses, but you control your destiny a little bit. I think they play Georgia Tech at the end of the season. If they win out and Miami and Florida State both take down Georgia Tech, then it's really anyone's conference. I think this one's still really, it's control your own destiny for both of these teams. And I think there's still a ways to go to improve overall towards the potential playoff national championship, but this one was really important. Actually, looking down here, Georgia Tech does not play either of these teams. So if they win out, they'll be in the ACC championship over Florida State. So yeah, this one, it really seems like Florida State's got a bit of another step up to really be in national championship contention. They're going to be a good team. They might be a 2-loss team that barely misses out on the playoffs, not being able to go in the conference championship. But of course, they'll still have Florida at the end of the season, some other chances to prove themselves. And they weren't, despite being down big, this wasn't as disappointing of a loss. Let's get on here to the final game. It's Notre Dame against Boise State. So the spread, I think, was 21.5 points, not particularly close. And while Notre Dame absolutely dismantled Arkansas, who fired Sam Pittman last week, this was going to be one of the harder tests for the Irish the rest of the way this season against an offense averaging nearly 500 yards on the season. And to me, Notre Dame looks really, really good again. This team, of course, made the national championship last year. I am certainly biased as well, being a student, got the jersey back there. It was the green out game. And I was really impressed with the defensive effort. They got 4 interceptions. They allowed barely 100 yards rushing and barely 200 yards passing, but only 7 points. 4 interceptions and 7 points. They got after Madsen for 4 sacks as well. It was the best overall defensive effort from Notre Dame. This offense is significantly better than last year's national championship offense. It doesn't have Riley Leonard. It has C.J. Carr, who's not as good of a runner, but a significantly better passer. And with the capable running back dynamic duo, the receiving core is improved. Raritan's been a great tight end, just a consistent pass catcher. But with Malachi Fields, who caught a beautiful jump ball in the third quarter, Notre Dame won 28-7, and it wasn't really close. They played the grittiest, toughest game of the season this far. And it's really starting to round out the team. And what I find myself identifying with in this Notre Dame team is it seems like they always lose at the start of the season in a way that they shouldn't. They lose a game that is really tough or that they shouldn't. And they consistently raise their floor step by step by step throughout the rest of the season. I find myself doing that in my academic classes as well. I start off bombing a test, getting a poor grade at the start of the class, but I study the hardest really after those challenges. And by the end of the class for me, by the end of the season, the floor is so raised that I know that I'm going to do the best that I have at the end of the semester. I study to the point where I have this base of knowledge. I've practiced enough where there's almost nothing that can be thrown that I won't have some idea of how to do. And I think that is really this Notre Dame team. They are always tested in the start of the season non-conference. This team doesn't sign up for an easy non-conference schedule. And they really step it up. They raise their floor each game. They did this last year. Of course, losing against NIU, they looked shaky against Miami of Ohio. By the time Louisville came around, the defense looked really strong. When they played the armed forces schools, the service academies destroyed them. By the end of the season, it started looking really, really strong. And the product just kept getting better throughout the season. I think that the test of USC in a couple weeks is going to be certainly a challenge for Notre Dame. And really facing a good offense against Mayava, who I think has the best QBR in the country. if I'm not wrong. He has the highest QBR. So, of course, they'll be playing a great quarterback. The defense will be tested again, and I'm interested to see how the defense really does consistently through that game. Can they present the same consistent product that we saw here? They've just had fantastic defensive showings against two respective really, really talented offenses with dual threat quarterbacks, with good running games to complement passing games. And Leonard Moore is back. He had 2 interceptions in this game. I can't really say enough, but it gets me excited as someone involved in Notre Dame to just see this team starting to raise their floor. It was a 5% chance for them to make the playoff, but it feels a lot higher right now, because if this is the product you're getting against Boise State, where the offense played well, didn't necessarily play its best game, but the defense held them to 7 points, and they didn't score outside of the first half, then really the sky's the limit for this team. So I think Notre Dame looks really good, and as a 2-loss team, they're my favorites to make it into the playoffs over anyone else right now, just with the ease of the schedule. They'll still be tested a little bit, but winning out in a big way, this team's going to have a real chance to make the playoff. Looking down here as well, I'm actually realizing that I missed a couple of games that I wanted to mention something about. Georgia rolled against Kentucky. That was a great one. Illinois also looked strong. Iowa State fell in one of the early games. I was not watching that game, unfortunately, so can't really break that one down. I saw Virginia win in overtime against Louisville. They were an underdog, even being ranked. They won in overtime on the road. It was a really impressive performance, just stepping up in the overtime environment and following up a big Florida State win from the Friday night before. As well as Texas Tech looked really strong against Houston, who's another undefeated team, really the only undefeated matchup of the day, I think. My Mississippi State bet, we went flat. We struck out in that one. Texas A&M looks really good. So, unfortunately, we went a little cold yesterday. I had Miami covering, and then I had Mississippi State as well. So, a little bit of an unfortunate result there for us. But we'll get it back next week. And that's going to be about it. I'm a little early today, so we won't be reacting to the AP poll. Maybe I'll get to do that in the next couple days when it comes out. It might be a Tuesday thing, as I'll be reacting to. Well, it might actually be a tomorrow thing, considering I'll probably wait to do my NFL top 10 until Tuesday. So I'll have that out eventually. And yeah, let me know your thoughts about the college football weekend down below. And I'm excited to bring some more sports content in the future.